Hi everyone, we are about a minute and a half from air time, so take your seats please, and we'll look forward to a good debate with our candidates.
Is Jason going to give opening remarks
He said
as well?
he
No?
didn't,
Okay.
I asked him. You didn't want to do remarks, right? I'm doing them?
Okay.
Just making sure. Do you want a bottle instead? Good evening, everyone. My name is Carol Mulready. I'm the Voter Service Chair for the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford. I welcome you here for the first Congressional District of Connecticut debate at Trinity College. Democracy is not a spectator sport. We, the voters, do have work to do to learn about the people who want to step forward and represent us. This is one opportunity. I want to thank the candidates, Jim Griffin, Mary Sanders, and John Larson, for being here with us this evening. They have taken time and effort to campaign to represent you. Please give them a round of applause. We greatly appreciate that we are able to bring this event to you on the campus of Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, with the cooperation of the Office of the President here in this beautiful setting. We thank the President, Joanne Berger-Sweeney, and her assistant, Jason Rojas, for all of the good work that you have done to make this possible. Also thanks to Gil Martinez of the Hartford Public Access TV station for making arrangements for all the public access stations in the District 1 to be able to broadcast this, and many of them are going to do a simulcast. The League of Volunteers who help make this possible are invaluable aids to all of these events. I want to especially thank Chris McLaughlin, who was central in making this happen. Tonight's format is a timed response format, and each of our candidates will have his or her own timer. And they are right in front of the candidates in our front row, and they are our co-president, Libby Switek, and the Trinity student, Callan Sohagan from Trinity College, and I may be messed up her name terribly, but pretty close. And also Hartford Votes member and part of the coalition that the League is part of, Sammy Bray. So thank you very much for all that you have done to help us. Finally, the audience is asked not to clap during the candidate remarks in order to have more time for questions. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for this evening, our League member, Debbie Poland.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome again to the debate for the 1st Congressional District, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford in cooperation with Trinity College and Hartford Public Access TV. We are pleased to partner with the candidates to bring you this nonpartisan voter service for the 2024 election. As Carol indicated, I'm Deb Poland of the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford. I'll serve as the moderator this evening. Before we go any further, I would like to ask all of you to stand, and we're going to recite together the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For the debate tonight, each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. After all of the candidates have responded, they will each have the option to rebut one time for 60 seconds each. Then we'll move on to the next question. We will rotate who answers each question first. The order for the first question was determined by lottery prior to the debate. Candidates have not been provided the topic nor the questions in advance. We will begin with 2-minute opening statements, and at the end of the debate, each candidate will provide a 90-second closing statement. Again, we ask that you hold your applause during the debate and remain quiet so that the candidates can hear the questions and your fellow audience members can hear the candidates. And now it's my pleasure to turn this over to the candidates who have committed their time and energies to this important aspect of the democratic process. Please welcome Democratic candidate John Larson, Republican candidate Jim Griffin, and Green Party candidate Mary Sanders. By lottery, the order of the opening statements is Ms. Sanders, then Mr. Larson, and finally Mr. Griffin. Ms. Sanders?
Thank you. My name is Mary Lou Sanders, and first of all, I'd like to thank the League and the other candidates for putting this together, all the volunteers that were involved, and Trinity for hosting. A little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in New Britain, and I've been living in Hartford for 30 years. My background is one of social services. As my fellow candidate here, I also went to Central after I went to Capital Community College. And my first intention was to become a teacher also, but I switched majors 3 times and ended up working in social services for 35 years. My last position was at the Spanish-speaking Center of New Britain, where I was the executive director for 17 years. I do teach Spanish, and I'm available if anybody needs a tutor. I'd like to thank my daughter for being here and some friends, and what else can I say about myself? I'm a member of many organizations, starting with the NAACP, Connecticut Peace and Solidarity Coalition. I'm an associate member of Veterans for Peace, a member of Vecinos Unidos, and many other cultural groups in the city and around the state. I am in the race because I have 4 marvelous children and 8 grandchildren. And I'm not happy with the way things are going for the United States right now. Like my other fellow colleague here, I do not trust the government. I remember those words. And I would like to try to change things for the better, address the climate crisis, rein in military spending, and take care of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
Well, thank you, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters as well for what I think is informative for the American people, the opportunity for citizens in the state of Connecticut to hear what the candidates stand for and what they will do. It's an honor for me to represent the 1st Congressional District. I think one of the most humbling things in life is when the people you associate with place the trust in you to represent them in Washington, D.C., but also to provide service here at home. That's something that gets overlooked, I think, in congressional races. Our office has helped more than 2,000 individual cases within the 1st Congressional District. And that's from everything with dealing with the IRS to immigration to food stamps. But it's an important and vital service because your job is to represent and serve the people. I like to say that I'm a product of public housing, public education, and public service. I grew up in a federal housing project. In fact, we were there today in Mayberry Village with reading for literacy with the children at Mayberry School. A very important thing today, I think, as everyone acknowledged. And to have grown up in public housing gives you an appreciation for what people are going through today. But I also have served in public education as a teacher, and I think public education is vital for our future education, especially as it relates to civics. And to be the representative from this district is the honor of my life.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you. No. Thank you to the League for sponsoring this wonderful program. I just want to start off with just the backdrop as to why I would want to do something as crazy as this to run for Congress. My mom was born in Hartford on Garden Street. I brought a little article here from the front page of the Hartford Current a few weeks ago. Mom said growing up on Garden Street was just a wonderful experience. Nobody locked the doors. Everybody had a job, and everybody went to church. All right? And this article talks about the fact that these two ministers here, Green and Dexter, are walking the streets in Hartford with guns to keep the murderers and the drug dealers away from the innocent children. Right? That's how far Hartford has come, and the state, in a lot of ways, has followed suit. Not in all respects, but our beautiful city of Hartford is a figment of what it used to be. Dad was born over in Waterbury, served in the Navy with John Kennedy out in the Pacific. He played Legion baseball with Jimmy Pearsall, who was a good star for the Red Sox for a number of years. And Mom graduated from St. Mary's Hospital in Waterbury as an RN, and they moved to Bristol to start a family. I attended St. Anthony's local parochial grammar school in Bristol. I was the only kid in the class who wasn't Italian. It was fun to grow up with the Gaelic and the garlic. And I was the only kid whose last name did not end in a vowel at school there. I attended Bristol Eastern High School, served as the president of the student council, was captain of the swimming team, played a little baseball, gave a congressional address that Congressman Tom Meskel read into the congressional record for a Veterans Day address, and wanted to attend West Point afterwards. So I matriculated there at the Academy in 1968, and we had I was in search of a couple things, finding out why Mom was disappointed in doing American Cancer Society fundraising work as a nurse in Bristol and around the district, that we had no cure for cancer announced. That and the fact that I knew Lee Harvey Oswald hadn't killed Kennedy taught me in the beginning that we can't trust government at the moment. There's a cancer.
Can you wrap it up, please, Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move to the questions now, and the first question I will start with Mr. Larson. In your view, is the economy doing better or worse today than over the past 10 years? What would you propose to either get our economy back on track or to sustain its current path?
Well, you have to say from the outset, when you go through the worldwide COVID problem that impacted everybody in the world, and then also when you go through a global inflationary time, things have been difficult in the transition. But under President Biden, we've created 16 million new jobs, and unemployment is at an all-time low. But if it's impacting you at your kitchen table, what you need is a job. What we've been focused on, and what I continue to focus on, is like the fair we have with Joe Courtney here to grow jobs in Hartford by having people go to work for our manufacturing base. And whether it's at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft or whether it's down in Groton, that's what we'll do, is to continue to create jobs for the people here in this district.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Griffin.
In order to bring back Connecticut's economy and have jobs, there's a large issue that the people in Washington don't want to face, and that's the fact that we sent our middle-class job base, all those wonderful industrial manufacturing value-added work, to China, starting in the 70s and 80s, and stripped. I've been to China a few times. I've seen where those companies are located still. They pay their people slave labor rates, what they used to pay your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, a living wage. That was done deliberately by the Federal Reserve, which is just a tool of the global bankers who want to bankrupt America, and that's what's causing our emasculation of our economy here. It's not coincidental. It's all being done deliberately, and it's because representatives like John Larson won't confront them and face this down. There's more money to be gained in Washington by going along with the show rather than standing up for the people. I'm going to petition the Fed to be disbanded, put in a U.S. constitutionally run Federal Reserve that will respond to the people, and we'll go back and take those jobs back from China, back from Mexico, back to hometown America here in Connecticut and around the country. That will bring back the economies that the question is getting to.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. In your view, is the economy doing better or worse today than over the past 10 years? What would you propose to either get our economy back on track or to sustain its current path?
Well, I believe that our economy is in a lot worse shape than it was 10 years ago because of the COVID pandemic and many other things. Government spending is out of control. Every year we spend much more money than what we bring in. Our federal debt is, what, $35 trillion, something like that, and our unfunded debt is probably 3 times more than that. So the value of our dollars are going down. For people like myself that are no longer working and counting on our Social Security benefits, those benefits have continued to shrink. Yes, we get a cost of living increase every year. So if my cost of living increase last year was $30 and my rent went up $50, so I'm $20 in the hole. This year my rent went up $100, and I think we're only going to get like 2.8%. But that cost of living increase is not, is not really taking into consideration many of the things that the American public is dealing with. Our federal spending, being out of debt, our military budget is half of our discretionary spending, and we really need to rein that in. Medical costs are through the roof. If we had a single-payer system, Medicare for all, that would save us $3.5 trillion a year.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to use time for rebuttal?
Well, I could use the opportunity to rebuttal, but I'll save my what I have to say.
It's completely optional.
I think we would do a lot better in our economy if we weren't wasting a lot of money. And I'd only add as an adjunct to the idea of bringing the middle-class jobs back from China as a first thing of patriotism. And because they were done deliberately to be sent over there to ruin the middle class deliberately. But the other thing we can do here locally is to shore up and ethically improve our medical system. We know how to cure, and that would reduce the cost of medical. We have the most expensive medical system in the world. We have one of the worst curing rates of anywhere in the world. We don't cure anything. All we do is treat the symptoms. And that's because we have an unethical system that's set up to make profits, not cure people. That goes for cancer, diabetes. We know how to cure all these things. We choose not to because we have an unethical medical system and an unethical Congress.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to question number 2, and we're going to start with Mr. Griffin. Do you think Congress has a role in addressing climate change? Please explain your position. Do you think Congress has a role in addressing climate change? Please explain your position.
I think climate change is for the most part a hoax. Okay, I briefed for the military. I was an Army officer. Worked at CIA, NSA, and DIA after West Point. I think for the most part, climate change is a hoax. It's a way to make the people afraid and make a argument for a one world order because we can't stand the climate change. We know how Nikola Tesla taught us how to moderate the weather. When Albert Einstein was dying, and people asked him about how it felt to be the smartest guy in the world, he would always put them off with humility on Einstein's part, saying, "Go talk to Nikola. He got everything right. I think I got everything wrong." That's one of the reasons why Elon Musk didn't name his company Einstein. He called it Tesla. Tesla knew that the Earth sits in a sea of electrical energy, and that is tappable to go into. And the climate change, we can weaponize or pacify weather, which should be good news for the people who were just hammered by the storms Helene and Ida and down in North Carolina, Florida, and the like there. And that was done, I hate to say it, deliberately by our government. And you need to be awake to understand that. We know how to, I briefed on that, how to pacify using Tesla technology and weaponize the weather. Either that or they let these storms come through, and it's not likely that.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
The federal government definitely has a role in addressing climate change. they are the ones most in control. Whatever we do with the municipal and state level is going to have little impact. What they do at the federal level will have much more impact. If you think about the military again, I know I harp on that a lot, but they are one of the biggest causes of climate change. If you drop bombs across the, on the other side of the planet, it's still affecting us here. So, and then the lack of regulation over all these corporations that are dumping chemicals and causing disasters all around the United States, and there's very little federal oversight. The governmental agencies that are supposed to be addressing this, the EPA and other departments, their guidelines have not been updated in decades in many cases, and there's very little oversight to what's going on. The federal government definitely needs to take a look at this and figure out what they're going to do, because we're going to have a societal collapse. The Colorado River's drying up, and we won't be able to have agriculture in California, which provides most of our fruits and vegetables. So no one else but the federal government can do this.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
Well, I agree with Representative Sanders. No one but the federal government is going to be able to do this. But it's a global problem, again, that has to be addressed. In the United States, under President Trump, went from first to last. And under President Biden, we're back on top. And why is that so? Because we invested over $370 billion in recognizing what we have to do to combat climate change. And then also, it starts at every single level, especially right here in your own home and house and how you conduct yourself. So I was pleased that we're able to announce a $1.9 million grant in funding sustainable aviation fuel, which, as you point out, is a big cause of a lot of the problems that we have with climate change. And also another $62.5 million for the Connecticut to supercharge solar energy. I've been a long-standing commitment to hydrogen, because I believe fuel cell technology in the future is going to be the way for us to go and utilize that abundant resource and produce clean energy. That should continue to be our focus under President Biden and the Democrats in Congress. I'm glad that we were able to deliver that.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to rebut? Ms. Sanders.
I would just like to say it's great that the federal government is investing in solar. We need more wind. It's not always sunny. I understand that wind generation, takes longer to build and a little more costly, but we'll get more bang for the buck on that. The other thing is that we can talk about renewables, but as long as the federal government is subsidizing the fossil fuel industry, it's going to go nowhere.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Griffin?
Just as a PS, Nikola Tesla, when he figured out that the reason all of our hearts beat with electrical energy, electrical impulse, not a mechanical impulse, is because we are all connected to what he called, and he got this right, Einstein said he got it right, I got it wrong, is that the earth floats in a sea of energy, a sea of electrical energy. That is the reason why your heart beats with an electrical impulse. You are connected, we are all connected by, as almost like antennas, to the Earth surrounding electrical energy. That electrical energy, I'm nothing against at all, solar or wind power, nothing wrong with that at all. But we don't need Eversource, we don't need United Illuminating. We are able to hook into that with an accumulator, a condenser, and an antenna, free energy. We don't need Eversource, technically. We don't need United Illuminating, you understand? Right? But the government is too corrupt to let us tap into that, to do exactly when Tesla died, everybody took his papers, CIA, Justice Department, the military, and they've never let that part of it go. We have free energy. All this whole thing about—
Can you wrap it up, please?
We're worrying about this form and that form for pollution. If we tapped into that,
Please
we'd
wrap
be
it up.
honest. Yep.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. Mr. Larson, did you want a minute for rebuttal or no?
No, that's okay.
All right. We're going to move on to the next question, and this question we're going to start with Ms. Sanders. The federal government has made a promise to its citizens that Social Security will be available for them when they retire. With retirees living longer and fewer people to replace them in the workplace, is the system sustainable? Will people in Generation X, Millennials, and Gen Z get Social Security? What are your recommendations?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have this huge unfunded debt, future debt, And that Social Security payments are included in that, obviously. The way to address that is to raise the cap. I believe one of the things is to raise the cap on earnings that people would pay into Social Security. Those top earners are paying a small percentage into the system, and they will draw on it heavily later. Right now, I'm living on an income of $23,000 a year after working my whole life, because my Social Security check is based on a non-profit salary that I was, where I worked. Unfortunately, many seniors are going to be in that situation with pension plans not being offered by many employers, and we're really going to be counting on that Social Security money. That fund, that's an obligation that the federal government has to the seniors. It has been in existence for however long it's been, and people have been paying into that. I know that we get our cost of living increases every year. They are minimal, and they are not really causing the problem. I think the biggest cause of the problem is that people have that cap, that earnings cap, that needs to be raised greatly in order to have more people paying into the system.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
This is my chief mission in the United States Congress. Congress has not addressed Social Security to enhance it since Richard Nixon was President of the United States. 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. There are more than 70 million Americans who rely on Social Security. And for more than 28 million Americans, it's the only benefit that they have. And for 5 million Americans, they get below poverty level checks from the federal government for a program that they have invested in. Most of them are women. And of the women, most of them are women of color. It's long overdue for Congress to act. That's why we put together Social Security 2100, to enhance Social Security across the board. Make sure that people that are still working don't have to pay taxes on their Social Security. Make sure that people who have been denied Social Security benefits, like teachers, firefighters, police officers as well, are capable of getting the Social Security that they have paid for throughout working in their lives. Our bill does all of that, and it's paid for. It's paid for in full, and you should know that the trust fund is separate and does not contribute to the national debt. But what we do need is to make sure that Social Security is there for future generations, and if Congress does nothing, it'll be cut. Congress needs to act, pass Social Security 2100, and enhance the benefits for every citizen in this country. It's the nation's #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly and the #1 anti-poverty program for children. We could spend the whole night just talking on that. I hope the League does something with Social Security at some point in making this a national issue.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin?
Yeah. The Fed needs to be dismantled. The other reason relating to Social Security is that we are having terrible inflation. A big part of that is that our debt, which is a lot more than the $40 trillion they talk about, they're not accountable to give to the president, to the Congress, an accounting of how much money is there. But they're spending us. The purpose of one of the purposes of the Fed was to bankrupt the country. And you have to understand that. Okay, that's one of the purposes of the Fed. And if we take them down and put up a constitutional bank, a U.S. bank, and then put them back on a gold, silver standard, you won't have the crazy inflation that the Fed deliberately induces. All right? And then the other thing, again, is to, if we can reduce medical costs for the costs of actually having the medical system actually reveal and quit suppressing cures for the major chronic diseases, from cancer to diabetes to MS to Parkinson's to even malaria. We know how to cure it. It's not even difficult. The system is corrupt. It's allowed to be because Congress doesn't have the nerve to go against the Fed, and they all get paid so well that there's no incentive for them to do something in a principled manner. And that's where the problems actually go as far as to go. It's another level below what the normal debate is about anyway.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to use 60 seconds to rebut? Ms. Sanders.
Yes, I would just like to say Congressman Larson is correct. You know, he's been what is he, ranking member of the Social Security Committee, and he's been there in Ways and Means for what, a couple decades now, and keeps saying, send me back so I can finish the job. Well, he's been there long enough, and nothing is happening. And like he said, there's been no changes since Richard Nixon was in office. So either you're not talking to the right people, or you need to make some bridges across the aisle with your Republican colleagues and find a way to get this done. The other thing is looking at Medicare spending. I mean, we have such a broken system. Most of us have had to choose a provider instead of having traditional Medicare because the benefits were not enough under traditional Medicare. But if we got rid of this whole private healthcare system and had a Medicare for all system, we would really be saving money.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to rebut?
Yeah, I just would
Mr.
like
Larson.
to add, especially as it relates to Medicare benefits, what the Congress actually did and was proud to make sure that now, for the first time, that the government is going to be able to negotiate directly with pharmaceutical companies. Also, the out-of-pocket costs for anyone have been lowered substantially so that now people are going to be in a position where they'll be able to do it. But more work needs to be done with respect to Medicare and with respect to Social Security as well. I take a great deal of pride in being persistent in bringing this up. Sometimes things in a democracy take a long time, especially when no Republican is willing to admit the need. They all tell you how much they love Social Security, but don't do anything about it to fund it so that people who have invested their money in the government with the idea the government will return that money to them by way of an annuity has failed them.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin.
On John's point that this is a great awakening for us to be able to negotiate with the drug companies, okay? The drug companies are a big part of the problem. They have no intentions of curing anything. Have you ever heard of the drug companies curing anything? Never is the answer to that question. Never. And the reason is because they are not incentivized, they're not ethically in that direction. That's not where their brains and ethics go. Negotiating with them is actually negotiating with the devil, as far as on this. So it's worthless to think that that's going to end up in being something good. You have to get a group of people who run the medical system who are ethical, who know that the cures exist, and bring them out. Other than that, you're just spinning wheels.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, and Mr. Larson, you'll be starting us off on this one.
Sure.
Connecticut has some of the richest and some of the poorest cities in the country, including our capital city of Hartford, which has one of the highest child poverty rates in the nation. Do you believe that government has a role in solving this issue? Why or why not? Please be specific on your policy position.
I couldn't hear what you said before you said why or why not. What did you say?
Do you believe that government has a role in solving the issue of poverty?
Absolutely, government has a role in it. And I'm proud that we're able to bring back more than $977 million just to the city of Hartford alone. And that's because the need is there. And that's because whether it's in the north or south end of Hartford, there are people that are still living in poverty. What is the key there? The key is to make sure that we're able to provide jobs for the future. That's why Joe Courtney and I held the forum that we did in Hartford to allow people and students to understand at an early age that you don't have to go to college. You can still get a good manufacturing job either at Electric Boat or Pratt Whitney Aircraft or the whole supply chain of what provides manufacturing in this district to help people out of the realm of poverty. And that includes home ownership as well. And these are the kinds of things that we're focused on down in Washington, D.C., and need to be in order to uplift the people who need the help the most.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
The federal government does have a role in addressing poverty in the cities or wherever it exists. There are many ways to do that. Obviously, training and good jobs is number one. Congressman Larson mentions, bringing good jobs in, but he only mentions a couple of defense employers or war industry employers, right? There should be good manufacturing jobs in many sectors, not just at Electric Boat and Pratt & Whitney. Most of the other jobs are service-related, and they do not pay well. We have a fairly decent, supposedly minimum wage in Connecticut, but compared to the cost of living in Connecticut, it's really not. And you look at the cost, if you look at the minimum wage across the United States, I mean, that is really embarrassing that a nation like the United States has whatever it is, $7.50, $7.75. You have people working at that level, struggling to provide food. We have people sleeping in their cars and going to work and trying to decide whether they can buy their prescription or feed their kids. It's ridiculous. I know money has come into the city, and I know we have some good training programs, but most of them are either healthcare, service-related. There's very little as far as manufacturing jobs going on right now. Most of our manufacturers have left the United States. I'm from New Britain, Hardware City. I can name 10 factories that closed down while I was living there. So we need to do something about that and bring back good jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin.
Government has a role if it's ethical. It isn't ethical on the point of how to bring back the jobs. It's an insincere effort on government's part. Let me explain. The Federal Reserve was put into place along with the large family banks, 1910 at Jekyll Island, and implemented in 1913 as a part of the system in government. It's accountable to no one. All right? So the folks who are making decisions are captives of the effort between the large banks and the Federal Reserve to bring down our nation under a system called Fabian Marxist communism. All right? There's a place outside of Surrey, England, with a mansion that has the image of the program of Fabian Marxism, and it is that of a wolf in sheep's clothing. They've been trying to take us down since 1913 by doing it slowly, choking us slowly, ruining the middle class, overspending so we're in bankruptcy, never solving a problem. And the only way we're going to get rid of this is if we face the Federal Reserve, throw its ass out of Washington, put in an American U.S. bank, and then have a straight-on conversation with the family banks who have been behind this, sort of a double-headed beast, and get them to face up to what they've been trying to do unconscionably to take us down because they want their colonies back. It's the biggest group is the
Please wrap it up.
The Rothschilds, followed by the Rockefellers, who want their colonies back. That's where this is coming from. Without that, you won't get the jobs.
Please wrap it up. Thank you.
Sorry.
Would anyone like to take some time to rebut? 1 minute. Ms. Sanders.
I would just like to add that in addition to the good jobs, we really need affordable housing. We need affordable housing. We need free childcare. We need free college, all right? That's part of the Green Party's plan. If you look at, I brought no campaign literature. I have no papers. I have nothing out there because I have a zero budget campaign. I didn't ask anybody for $1, not even the party, because people have other things to spend their money on. Affordable housing, free childcare, free college, at least at the community college level, because there's student debt is killing people, medical debt is killing people. Free public transportation would do wonders both for people's pocketbooks and the climate. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to take some time to rebut? Okay. We're going to move on to the next question, and we'll start with Mr. Griffin.
Yep.
Do you think Congress has a role in addressing reproductive health care? What specific initiatives or policies would you support on the national level?
Does Congress have a role in reproductive
health care.
Reproductive health care. 50 years ago, we never had women with infertility problems. We never had guys with low sperm counts. Okay? The sperm counts today in America are about a third of what they used to be at the turn of the last century. All right? This is not coincidental. This doesn't happen just because, it's the bad food, it's the bad water, it's the messed up vaccines with mercury and lead and things like that in them deliberately, aluminum, poisons, all right? And so we have this, we need to have more children. That's a very laudable goal, but we're not going to do it until we get rid of the hucksters that are making bad food, big agriculture, and bad medicine that only touches a symptom, but never ggets to the, curiously, never gets to the cause to cure anything. And We have a task laid out for us in that regard. It won't be easy, but it has to be faced. And when we do, we'll start to get the answer, and the birth rate will go back up because we'll get rid of the bad food. And right now, you've got China, who we've let in, the good Dems over there, John, let in 17 million people the last couple of years or so under Mr. Biden. About at least 700,000 of them came through Canada, Chinese, right, into our country to man the agricultural fields that they took their balloon over the country to survey, all right? We allowed this.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Unconstitutionally, and that's treason on the part of our government to let the Chinese come in here and take over our farmland. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
Well, I absolutely believe in women's reproductive rights, and having 2 daughters, I want to make sure that we recodify Roe versus Wade, and that we make sure that decisions with regard to the health and well-being of not only women but all citizens is a matter of equality and a decision that should be made between the individual and their doctor, not by Congress. And so I believe that, I'm proud of the fact that when I was Senate President in the state of Connecticut, and George Jepson, who went on to be the Attorney General, we became the first state in the country to codify Roe versus Wade and make sure that women's reproductive rights would always be protected, because it is a health care issue and a decision between the individual and their physician.
Thank you. And Ms. Sanders?
I believe in a woman's right to choose, but I also have a problem with the term pro-life. To me, being pro-life means taking care of a child once they're born, making sure that they have adequate education, school, medical care, food, a decent place to live. It's not just about bringing a child into the world. Women have the right to choose what to do with their body according to what's best for them and their family, and that's a decision that should be made between them and their doctor. At the same time, I believe that there should be more resources available for women facing an unexpected or an unwanted pregnancy, because if those resources were available, they may decide to carry the child to full term, whether to raise themselves or to give another adoptive family the opportunity to raise a child. But ultimately, it's the women's right to choose. I'm not sure what Congressman Larson meant when he said recodify Roe, because I don't think it was ever codified at the federal level. I think whatever was in place was something temporary. They had many opportunities to codify it, but I don't think that ever happened. And hopefully they will be able to do that at some point.
Thank you. Would anyone like to take some time to rebut?
Yeah, I would only like to add that, and to all the people listening to this debate, that women's reproductive rights are on the ballot. And it is going to be a very clear choice between Vice President Harris and former President Trump in terms of protecting women's reproductive rights. I will continue in Congress to fight, as we have in the House, to make sure that we safeguard women's reproductive rights and make sure that everybody understands that that's a decision between the individual and their doctor, not one that needs to be made by government.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just a thought.
Go ahead, Mr. Griffin.
The issue of reproductive rights for a woman, I know, is very sensitive. I would say 2 things into the conversation. It should be a state level, not a federal level decision. And so I was very happy when Roe v. Wade got overturned, put it back to the states. The federal government is trying to control every asset, every capacity of your life. The states need to take stuff back to reduce the bureaucracy here. And while I'm not unalterably opposed to a woman's right to choose at all, I think God gave us all free will. So that applies to women in that difficult moment. But I think we should do something that we've been trying real hard on the Democrats' part to make this come about. We've taken God out of the schools. The 10 Commandments used to always be in the public schools as well as the parochial schools, and we've taken them out of public places, city halls, and that kind of stuff. So our children growing up don't have at least a moral backdrop, left and right, that they can figure out what they want to do in a difficult moment like that. I think we owe it to the children coming up that we give them a moral code to put back the school prayer, put back the Ten
Can you wrap
Commandments,
it up, please?
and that sort of thing.
Thank you. We're going to move on. Ms. Sanders, did you want to rebut or no?
I just wanted to say that having it decided at the state level is one of the worst things that can be, because you have people traveling from state to state, and then that becomes a class issue, because women with means are able to do that. They're able to travel and go someplace else to get the care they need, whereas lower income women will go back to the back alleys.
It makes it a little harder. I agree.
All right.
Yeah, I
We're
do.
going to move on to the next question. I think we've used all the
Do I have a
time.
chance to?
There's only one rebuttal. Sorry about that, Mr. Larson. Yeah, one rebuttal per candidate. Has he? Yeah, he did, right? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Larson.
Well, I completely agree with Ms. Sanders on this. And what happens when this is left up to the states is the god-awful situation that you have currently, where women have to travel from the state they're in, risk their lives to go to another state to get the reproductive health and the health care that they need. That should never happen in the United States of America, especially in this day and age. And I think that's why this is on the ballot. And this is a decision that the American people need to speak loud and clear about, and I think they will come Tuesday the 5th in making sure that women's reproductive rights are protected and elect President Harris President of the United States.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, and we're going to start with Ms. Sanders for this question. Some people believe that our immigration system needs reform. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? What do you think are the essential policies to include in any immigration bill for both the short and long term?
Our immigration system is broken. Obviously, what's happening at the border is horrendous. People coming in are looking for better lives. People are escaping war, conflict in their countries. People are escaping the effects of climate change in their countries, which their countries are not primarily causing, by the way. The poorer nations suffer by the actions of the more affluent countries that are causing the problems. We need to get away from the criminal, prosecution of immigrants trying to come in. We need to have people there to process applications for asylum. We have legitimate refugees and asylees trying to come in that are coming in from countries that we have agreements with to accept, but they're stopped up at the border because we don't have enough people processing those claims. I do not believe that is the source of all the drugs coming in. The majority of the people coming in are law-abiding people who are just looking for better opportunities for their family. And I think those people have the right to come here. That's our Constitution. We're supposed to welcome people, right? Ellis Island and all that. Most of our families were immigrants at one point, and we came into a country that belonged to someone else at that time too.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin?
Immigration has a way that it's supposed to be done. You come in legally, you follow a process. It's arduous. I know it is. I know people have spent a number of years doing it. But what we've gone to with this, what we happened here of the Democrats the last 3.5 years is chaotic and dangerous. All right? We have folks who are doing drug trafficking. We have folks who've just been let out of the jails from these countries. It's all part of the larger purpose, what I mentioned before, that the Fed and their bosses and the global families want to take America down. One way you do it is you stop the cohesion within the community by bringing in non-indigenous or non-citizens in here without any vetting at all. We have no idea how many people have been brought in here who are terrorists. The Immigration Patrol knows that they're terrorists. They let them in, and we've let in about 700,000 Chinese workers as well. All right, they're going to be doing something. Military-age Chinese workers for doing at least agriculture, if not a lot of other stuff more dangerous than that. So you need a vetting system, even if we have to improve the speed at which we do it. You don't just throw open the doors to the country and say, come on in, because we got rapists and everybody else coming through. The women who've been killed, you all know the stories in the press by people who've been let go 2 or 3 times, and they go out and they murder the young ladies. That's the Biden policy, that's the Democratic policy, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
Far from being ashamed, I'm proud of what Chris Murphy did. I'm proud that the senator was able to bring together conservative Republicans and bring together the Democrats in the Senate to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill. But President Trump didn't want that. What Republicans want is to keep the issue alive. We're a nation of immigrants. There's probably not a person in this audience that can't talk about their ancestors and where they came from. That's what's made this country both strong and diverse. And so we should have passed Chris Murphy's bill, but instead President Trump called up the Republicans in the House and said, please do not take this bill up. We'd rather campaign on this bill and talk about the fear as it relates to immigration. The comprehensive approach that Linda Sanchez has taken, as well as Chris Murphy, is to make sure that our borders are secure, that we enhance the security and the men and women who are working on those borders, but also that we have a path for dreamers and green cards that people can receive, and also help them get the work and the workforce that we desperately need in this country. So yes, immigration reform is on the ballot as well, and Democrats will deliver.
Would anyone like to rebut? Mr. Griffin, 60 seconds.
Nobody who's thinking straight thinks that the chaos at the border is a good idea. Huh? Nobody. This was done to help the Dems win in a few states with people that they will feel indebted to them for opening them up. There are, I'm sure, good people in there. We've let in Chinese, military-age Chinese. The balloon that went over was scouting. I was an Army intel officer, was scouting our land for agriculture for the Chinese, right? And they need workers there, so they brought them in here, right? You don't want Chinese making our food. Right, there's a lot John's not telling you about because it goes beyond Chris's bill. All right, Chris's bill did nothing to try to figure out who is coming in, what's their background, where are they coming from, are they on the terrorist list? Nothing was done in his bill about that. It should have been defeated.
Would anyone else like to take 60 seconds to rebut?
I said
Mr.
no.
Larson?
Again, I would say that what Chris Murphy did and how Congress operates is when you're able to bring both sides together and come to a compromise. And in this case, they came up with a compromise that would have both secured the border and also allow path forward for individuals that are here waiting to get their green cards because we desperately need that workforce. Like I said, we are a nation of immigrants, and it's the great that makes us one of the greatest countries in the world is our diversity and our ability to bring people from all over the globe here to the land of opportunity and create the dreams that they only could think about in the places that they came from, like Venezuela.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders, do you wish to rebut or no? Okay. We'll move on to the next question. The next question, we will start with Mr. Larson. Is there anything you would change about our healthcare system? What are your recommendations and why?
About
our healthcare system.
I couldn't.
Is there anything you would change about our healthcare system?
Well, there's a lot that I would change about the healthcare system, but let me start by saying how proud I am to have been a part of passing the Affordable Care Act. We now have more than 50 million people that have been able to get health care, when before, whether it was because of a pre-existing condition or because they simply couldn't afford it, that we got together and put the Affordable Care Act, which the Republicans have tried to repeal 52 times in Congress. But I think everybody understands not only were 50 million people helped, but right here in West Hartford, and again, constituent service, person called up who was paying $2,400 a month for their health care. With the Enhanced Affordable Care Act that we passed in 2020, we were able to cut those monthly premiums from $2,400 to $20. That's working on behalf of the citizens. Yes, I believe also we should have a universal program. It's a great goal, it's a great idea, but it has to be achieved collectively. We did that with the Affordable Care Act. There's more work that has to be done, but making sure that 50 million people that didn't have insurance now do was a great accomplishment.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin?
Our healthcare system is key to our health as a nation, all right? But you have to start off with people who are actually trying to cure diseases. Think about it. The last 100 years, we have almost 0 diseases cured. We have 50 different ways to treat symptoms, all of which come with 7 pages of detrimental side effects, some of them, if you read carefully, fatal. All right? This is not a system that understands how God's bodies were put together. All right? I had the pleasure a few years ago when I was working at the White House, I was doing the budgeting for the National Security Council, and President Reagan came down with stage 4 colon cancer. Here's a little something from it when President Reagan was governor of California. He did not want to go to all the big cancer centers, Sloan Kettering, Yale, Harvard, Cornell, whatever other place. He didn't want to go to any of them, right? He wanted to go to an alternative doctor because he knew from his experience in seeing what the FDA did in blocking a thing called Laetrile and vitamin B17, B15, a couple of pancreatic enzymes. It's in the Bible too, by the way, in Genesis, talking about the trees in the Garden of Eden for the Adam and Eve, that if you eat of those trees, you're going to be, that's what God wants you to eat. Inside those seeds, in those fruit trees, are B17 and B15. God knows what he's talking about. God knows what the hell the FDA is talking about. Right? You have to start. We got President Reagan, his alternative medicine.
Wrap
he did
it up,
it quietly, and then he lived another 22 years without ever touching chemo and radiation.
Please wrap it
It
up.
cost about $300 to do it.
Thank you.
Cure cancer.
Ms. Sanders?
Thank you. I agree with Congressman Larson. The Affordability Care Act was a good start. And I agree with Mr. Griffin that natural care needs to be included in our health care plans. We're currently spending $4 trillion a year on health care, and our health outcomes are much worse than other countries that have free health care. All right, so if we had a universal health care system, Medicare for all, like they're calling it now, that would save $500 billion a year, right off the bat. And it would include reproductive care, dental care, vision, mental health care. Everything would be included, including the pharmaceuticals. What happens with the current system is there's a 30% admin charge by all these competing insurers that are handling our healthcare system. I mean, when I became eligible for Medicare, the first year I had traditional Medicare. Then I realized it wasn't covering a lot of things I needed, and that if I switched to a managed care plan, I could have some transportation provided, some dental provided, and so I opted for that. But even now, dental care, they pay 50%, I have to pay 50% out of pocket if I can afford it. If we have universal health care, we would save money, we would have a better system, and we would eliminate the waste, because 30% admin, Medicare for all would be about 3% admin. That's a big difference.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to rebut? If not, we'll move on to the next question. And the next question will start with Mr. Griffin. There are several ongoing crises in the Middle East. If you are elected to Congress, would you try to address those? What general principles do you bring to the table in an effort to address these crises?
I went to West Point, went to airborne ranger schools, learned how to eat snakes and that sort of stuff. A little bit familiar. They try to make us a little familiar with tactical strategic questions. And what's going on in the Middle East there is an awful example of what military policy, it's beyond stupid. We have done the unthinkable here. If you understand, if you pull apart the two antagonists, we have funded Israel with high-tech stuff, amazingly high-tech stuff. We have also funded Hamas and Hezbollah. That was done through giving about, I don't know how many $300 billion, whatever the number was, I could be corrected on the amount of money that went to Iran, given to Iran, and they then gave it to Hezbollah and Hamas to go shoot at and bomb Israel. We are funding both sides of the conflict. Do you understand? That's a group of people, because the Federal Reserve, one of their jobs is to create wars all over the world so that they can make us weaker and take us down, because the large picture objective here, and I want to emphasize this, the large picture objective here, which John acts like he doesn't know about at all, is to bring about a one world order. The only way you do that is you create chaos in the strongest nation on earth, America, and do it over and over in every way you can. You don't cure diseases. You start wars all over the place. You, in fact, fund both sides of the war just so you make sure everybody's got enough to shoot at the other guy. That's the first thing I would do, and I would get rid of half of the staff at the Pentagon.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. There are several ongoing crises in the Middle East. If you are elected to Congress, would you try to address those? What general principles do you bring to the table in an effort to address these crises?
Well, the general principles that I bring to the table, you see my tattoo, I am a peace activist. I'm out on the street protesting what's happening in Gaza right now. There are now in Lebanon and Iran. You know, we're on the verge of nuclear war. Number one, you know, we need to rein in this military spending. I agree with Mr. Griffin on a lot of things. He may sound a little out there, but there's a lot of this going on. I have heard about that theory of full spectrum domination, whether it's, you know, through warfare or economic sanctions imposed on so many countries around the world. I think we have sanctions on about a third of the countries in the world. But we're on the verge of nuclear war right now, and I would ask Congress Larson to think about co-sponsoring House Resolution 77 that has been sitting there since last year, and none of the Connecticut delegates have signed on to this. And all it's asking for is that the Biden administration embrace the goals and the, you know, the priorities of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and, you know, to promise that we will work towards abolition of nuclear weapons. We are so close to having a nuclear war with any of these countries, and even if we don't have one here, a nuclear war in the Middle East is still going to affect us. It's still going to affect the climate. Every time a bomb drops somewhere, it affects the climate here. So we really need to address this, and I ask the congressman to think about House Res 77.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
War is horrible. There's no other way to describe what happens when human beings seek vengeance against one another. What transpired on October the 7th, the worst loss for Jewish people since the Holocaust, was horrific. What's transpired since is equally horrific. The loss of life in Gaza and in Palestine, but also what's happening in the Ukraine and what's happening in Taiwan. That is why we have to also maintain the strong military presence that we have, and why we need to continue to invest in that area as well. I totally agree that if peace were the answer and we could get there, that's something that everybody would like to achieve. But that just simply isn't the reality that we face on a day. We may wish it, we may like to think it would be so, and we can in our hearts pursue those goals, but in the meantime, we have to be there to defend our nation and our allies.
Thank you. Would anyone like to take 60 seconds to rebut? Ms. Sanders?
I agree with Congressman Larson that what happened October 7th was horrific. I do not agree with him that what's happening now is equally horrific. You cannot compare what happened on October 7th to the destruction of Gaza, the West Bank, people being pushed out of their homes, and now what's, Lebanon, Iran, the walkie-talkie, what was it, the pagers that blew up. Everything is so high-tech now, and people are being killed all over the place. We have military bases all over the world. There's conflicts going on in different African nations that we have instigated. We have instigated coups and military takeovers in different countries in South America. It's just like we think we need to be everywhere, and we think we need to impose our kind of democracy on the rest of the world. Well, guess what? Not everybody in the world thinks our democracy is so great. So we really need to rein in that military spending and bring our soldiers home and close up all those stations.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Griffin?
When you try to avoid war, you have to have a commander-in-chief who has his or her head together, okay? You don't start off that calculus by having someone with known dementia be your president for 4 years, all right? This is not a difficult thing to have figured out back when Mr. Biden took over, that he would only be a puppet. Do you understand? A puppet. And when you have something like that, you have nobody to actually direct. Then the bureaucracies, which are filled up with people who want wars all the time, because that's part of a way to take the America down to a one world order by having chaos all around the world, then tell the American people, we can't control this. We have to have a world government. We're sorry you're going to lose all your constitutional rights, but just trust us. You'll be happy, although you'll own nothing. All right? That's what they're trying to do. Understand the large picture that's going on here. But you begin that by supporting a president, someone for president, who you know has dementia. All right? Has dementia. And until we get rid of congressmen and congresswomen like that, we're going to have a hard time getting rid of dementia-riddled presidents.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, do you wish to rebut?
No.
Okay. We will move on to the next question. Ms. Sanders, you'll go first on this one. Overall, Connecticut sends more money to Washington than it receives. What would you do to ensure Connecticut, and specifically the 1st District, gets its fair share of federal dollars brought in?
All right, so Connecticut sends a lot of money to D.C., you're saying, and a lot of that is to fund military spending. I think if we stopped taxing our Connecticut families so much, I consider myself a social progressive, but a fiscal moderate. I would never say we need to tax people more, especially when spending is out of control in D.C. and there's no accountability to how the money is being spent. I think the Pentagon hasn't had an audit in like 6 years or something. So what we need to do is look at what that money is going to be spent on, and we need to find ways to reduce what we're sending and apply for grants. I mean, you're talking about how can we bring money back into Connecticut. We should be bringing money in to fund affordable housing. We should be bringing money in to fund education, because the Green Party believes that the colleges should be free, that we should have free child care. So these are things that the federal government could be helping us with.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
We did bring back almost $10 billion to the state of Connecticut. I was just in Winstead the other day, where we went out, where we've worked with the private sector, the community, and the public sector to produce 40 new homes for veterans. But these new homes also would have health care that goes along with it, and also the ability to market skills for the future. That's thinking into the future about what we have to do, not only in terms of providing the housing and its relationship with health care and the relationship to having skills. I'm proud of what we've been able to do for the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut, due to Governor Lamont and the General Assembly, has governed well and finds itself with a surplus. But part of that was because of the federal dollars that came in because of the American Rescue Plan and of the Inflation Reduction Act. And those dollars go directly to help people out, including people in North Hartford, where we're working very hard with Mothers United Against Violence and other groups within the neighborhood that continue to help assist and get at the core problems that we face as it relates to violence, as it relates to guns, and as it relates to putting people back to work. That continues to be my goal and the goal of Democrats in Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin.
On the issue of taxation and cost of living for our good folks here in Connecticut, it shocks to me every month is that the largest element in my mortgage payment is to the city of Bristol, which I love. I grew up in Bristol. But for insurance, for taxes, my local taxes is bigger than my principal, it's bigger than the interest, it's bigger than my insurance. Hard to believe. Just the local taxes are the biggest component of my house payment, right? On the subject of where the larger picture is trying to go to make life in America difficult, so we all clamor for a one world order. And I know I've mentioned that about 9 times, but I want you to listen here. The Democrats are toying with, and John would know better on this, but Democrats have been toying with this, gotten a lot of press, with doing a tax on unrealized real estate, unrealized gains on real estate. That will make it very difficult. That is, if you own a farm or you own a house, you pass it down to your children, and they pass it down to their children. As the value of the house goes up, you don't sell it. You haven't sold the thing. Nothing realized in profits. The Democrats want to tax that unrealized corporate or capitalization of your house's value from a taxation standpoint, even though you're still living there, okay? Understand what that's going to do to the difficulty for young people to get into the marketplace if they know they have to take over a house, even if it's their family house, that has a unrealized capital gains tax attached to the cost of it. It's going to keep young people out of the housing market, which is the intent.
Can you wrap it up, please?
The one world order does not want you to own a house, okay? Understand that.
Thank you.
That's
Please
what I'm
wrap
trying
it
to
up.
say.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to rebut? 60 seconds.
Well, just
Mr.
that I
Larson?
would like to add, because as the question started off of what we've brought back, you know, in the area of housing alone, $535 million for housing choice vouchers, which is critical to help people purchase a home. $42 million to build new housing and make much neglected repairs that need to be done to so much of our housing stock. I mentioned that we were out in Winstead and New Hartford talking about startups there and assisting and helping people, because the economic growth and what we bring back is directly related to housing as well. And we also are working on something bipartisanly, a Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, which I think will also help lower the costs overall for what housing is costing people dearly. For so many Americans, the only asset that they will have, the greatest asset that they will have, and that's what my parents taught us, would be their home, would be a house.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
Yes, I forgot to mention, and I had almost forgot, that Congressman Larson and I share also that we both grew up in public housing. He in East Hartford, myself in New Britain. Unfortunately, the housing development that I lived in and where I still have family members will be torn down next year. And that's happening all over the place, because in 1999, there was a rule, an amendment called the Faircloth Amendment that put a freeze on public housing. So while there may be Section 8 vouchers out there available, the Housing Choice Program, people are on waiting lists for years to get that. And now people are being pushed out of public housing. And since 1999, there was a rule that no city, no municipality can have more public housing than they had in that year, 1999. So you got 25 years population growth, but no growth in affordable housing as far as public housing developments. So that so many people that I grew up with left those housing developments and were able to buy houses. That's not happening no more.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin, do you wish to take a minute to rebut?
Should you repeat the question just one more time?
This is the question on Connecticut sends more money to Washington than it receives. What would you do to ensure Connecticut, and specifically the 1st District, gets its fair share? Do you want to take a minute to rebut? You're good? Okay. We are going to move now to the last question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Griffin.
Yep.
Tonight we are on the beautiful campus of Trinity College, and we have a lot of young people here in the audience with us tonight. Why should a young person participate in the democratic process? And when they go to cast their ballot, why should they vote for you?
Okay, so you end with an easy question, right? Right. the political process is the heartbeat of our country. To do it ethically, to do it with a clear basis on what you have here as a gift from the Founding Fathers. They gave us two sacred elements to our Constitution, which underpin everything we do, and why it's I think, the most compelling argument about why you should vote, and then you choose the person you think is the best person. But the two elements that are sacred, fragile but sacred, are one, that the people are the sovereign authority in our country, not a cartel made of bankers, not a bunch of communist cartels running rampant over free enterprise and competition, capitalism. And the second one is that fragile notion of the sovereignty of the people is based on the simple fact that we believe, and our Founding Fathers believe, that God the Creator imbued us with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're the only country on earth, right through to this day, that has ever tried to start a country on those two simple, sacred points. So if a young man or young woman needs another reason to vote, I would suggest they look at those two, reflect on them, and they should vote for the rest of their lives every time they have a chance.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
Well, I think even if we look at the debate tonight and the way that some of the questions have gone, I pride myself on saying that what we do in this district is listen. We do that by holding town halls and getting out to every community in the district. I don't think there's a senior center that we haven't visited. And at those centers, what we do is provide an opportunity for individuals to let us know what's on their mind. And then they have trusted me with representing them, and I strive to do that by then putting in legislation that I believe will help them. Delivering over $9 billion to the state was an important step and an important stop, especially coming through COVID and still dealing with a lot of the aftermath issues of COVID and also global inflation. And while, yes, 16 million new jobs have been created and unemployment is at an all-time low, there's still more that has to be done. And that's why I'm anxious to go back to Congress and pass Social Security so that we make sure that the more than 70 million Americans that rely on it are getting the enhanced benefits that they richly deserve. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
So this is the second time I run for this office against Mr. Larson and a Republican candidate. But last year I ran for Hartford City Council. The year before that I ran for this seat, and 4 years ago I ran for state senate. So I joined the Green Party in 2016 after being a Democrat all my life. Although I didn't always vote Democrat. A few times I voted Republican, a few times Independent, depending on the candidate and their policies. I'm not a party voter per se. The reason I joined the Green Party and the reason I'm running as a Green is because I believe people need more choices. When I didn't have to petition for this particular seat, but I had a petition for a couple of the others I ran. So I was up and down the streets of Hartford collecting signatures and talking to people. A lot of the people I spoke to were not eligible or thought they weren't eligible because they were either on parole or probation or different things, or they didn't have they were not citizens yet. But they were anxious to be able to vote once they could. But at the same time, I heard from a lot of people that they were just tired of politics as usual, and why bother voting? Everything's going to be the same. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. They just keep throwing passing the baton back and forth, Democrat, Republican, and nothing changes for the people at ground level. I believe that by choosing a third-party candidate, you are at least showing your dissent with what's going on in Washington, whether we win or not. At least you register your dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Please, thank you. Does anyone wish to rebut? 60 seconds. Mr. Larson?
Well, I would just like to say that the people of this district have trusted me and sent me to Washington to work on their behalf. And that's what we've done. We work across the aisle to get things done. It doesn't always happen that way, and Washington can be a very contentious place. But having served from everything from the Board of Education to the Town Council to State Senator and now in the United States Congress, I think I've demonstrated the ability to work across the aisle and with people in order to get things done. It's important to listen, it's important to lead, but it's also important to deliver on behalf of the people that you've represented. I'm proud of what we've been able to achieve under both the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan, and the dollars that have poured into this state that go directly to the critical issues that we face, whether it's housing or whether it's employment or whether it's making sure that our manufacturing base stays as strong as it should.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to rebut? Ms. Sanders.
I just want to add that the Democratic Party has sued to get the Greens off the ballot, not here in Connecticut, but in many other states, because, you know, it's that spoiler thing, you know. They think if you have a third party in the race, you're going to throw a vote for a Green is a vote for Trump or whatever the rhetoric is. If we had ranked choice voting, they could have worked for ranked choice voting decades ago, and there would be no spoiler effect. I remember when my mom voted for Ralph Nader. I was so proud of her, you know, a couple decades ago. She says, no, he may not win, but that's okay. I'm not happy with the other two candidates. Why would I pick the lesser of two evils? I'm still going to get evil. You know, pick who you want, vote your conscience, vote your values, and don't worry about whether the person wins or not. You know, little by little, if we get 5% of the vote, at least we'll be considered a major party and we'll qualify for funding, you know, like the other candidates do.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin, do you wish to rebut?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to move to the candidates' closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to provide a closing statement. So I'll ask our league timers to be ready for that. And the order will be same as for opening statements: Ms. Sanders, Mr. Larson, and then Mr. Griffin. So Ms. Sanders?
Well, again, I would just like to thank everybody who put this together and my fellow candidates for being willing to come on the stage and answer these tough questions that, you know, people deserve the right to hear the answers to. Again, about myself, I'm a peace activist. I'm a family person. I worry about my 8 grandchildren, what kind of planet they're going to have. You know, I worry about the climate crisis that's not being addressed. I worry about military spending and all the other federal spending that's going on and the federal debt. And you know, our dollars are losing value. Countries are joining BRICS all over the place, and the value of the dollar is going to keep coming down because people are tired of the way United States does business around the world. So I encourage you not to just pay attention to mainstream news. Get your news elsewhere. All the media, you know, all the media we're getting, and it's all owned by the 1% or the 0.5%. And being controlled. It's very limited what we can, you know, the news we have access to. You really have to search it out. So I encourage you to look at the Green Party platform. Our candidate, Jill Stein, has been a longtime activist. Most of the Green Party candidates are activists first, candidates second. So just give us some consideration, and when you go to the ballot, vote your conscience.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
Well, I too want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this forum on, this debate this evening. I also want to applaud my colleagues as well. It takes a lot to run for public office. It takes a lot to put your name forward, and especially sometimes in a district like the 1st District, which is predominantly Democratic in nature. So I commend them. I also remember Billy Ciotto, who worked in my office and who I served with in government for a number of years. And Billy said that it's all about these 5 simple words. How may we help you? And that's how we run and govern our office in the 1st Congressional District, is reaching out and helping the people that need the services from their government. And whether it's lowering people's health care costs, whether it's interceding on their behalf with respect to immigration reform, or even getting something as simple as a passport, we're there to help. That is the role. That is the high honor of service. There's nothing more rewarding you can do in life than serve the public and have someone come up to you and say, "Thank you. You helped me with that." I hope I'll be provided by the citizens of this district with an opportunity to go down there and continue to fight for women's reproductive rights, to make sure that we get Social Security enhanced and that we fix our immigration system.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you for the leagues. We are lucky to have the League of Women Voters and being such a good civic operation here in Connecticut. I've got just 3 or 4 things I want to mention from a legislative issue. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected to represent you in Washington, these are some of the things I'm going to push for and lead on the House floor if necessary. One, we need a long overdue amendment to the U.S. Constitution that provides each and every one of you the rights to medical freedom as a U.S. basic Bill of Rights, just like freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, rights, and you don't have to worry about having to get approved by the pharmaceutical companies who have no intentions of curing anything, zero. Okay, that's why we need a medical amendment to the Constitution to allow you medical freedom to choose what things you get, what vaccines you take, what you don't take, whatever the case. All right. Second, I think we need as I mentioned with the Fed, take it down, put a constitutional U.S. bank in place, and then make sure we go back to a gold, silver standard so we don't keep running ourselves into debt. I want to restore Title IX integrity for women in sports. You're seeing a mockery, almost a satanic mockery of the distinction between men and women in women's sports, where guys are allowed to, compete against them swimming or boxing in the Olympics, or in the ladies' room, you have to contend with guys who are not sure what sex they are. All right? Title IX did not allow this sort of foolishness to be happening. It's meant to break us up as a culture.
Can you wrap it up, please?
We need to stop the.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much to the candidates for participating in this exchange of ideas this evening to help educate the residents of the 1st Congressional District. Thank you very much to the League Timers, to Trinity College, to Hartford Public Access Television, and to all of you for watching. Good night, and please remember to vote.
Nice job.
et.gov.